Welcome to the deep dive. You, the learner, have given us your sources, and our mission, as always, is to dig in and pull out the core insights you need nice and efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're tackling a really big one, long-term family wealth preservation. We're drawing from excerpts of Family Wealth, Keeping It in the Family.
It's a fascinating read. Covers so much ground.
It really does. Family governance, trusts, philanthropy, the roles different people play. It's all in there.
Yeah.
So our goal today, our mission for this deep dive, isn't just about managing the money side of things. It's about uncovering those deeper principles, those strategies that actually work for keeping wealth, well, in the family across generations.
Getting beyond just the financial statements.
Exactly. Okay, so let's jump in. Where does the author start us off?
Well, he kicks things off with something I think many people have heard, that proverb, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations.
Right. The idea that wealth gets built, maybe maintained for a bit, and then often lost by the 3rd generation.
Precisely. And he points out it's pretty universal. You see similar sayings everywhere, like the Chinese rice paddy to rice paddy. It's a stark reminder that holding on to wealth long term is, well, it's tough.
Yeah.
The core idea being, creating wealth is often one person's big push, but keeping it, that takes sustained effort from a lot of people working together.
And he has a personal stake in this, doesn't he? I found that really compelling.
Absolutely. He mentions his own mother's family, how they lost their wealth even faster, just in the 2nd generation.
Wow.
Yeah. So you really feel that personal drive behind his work. It's not just academic for him.
Makes it much more real, I think.
Definitely. And he draws this really interesting parallel to physics, to energy and entropy.
Okay. How did that work?
So think of building wealth, like organizing energy, right? Creating structure. But naturally, things tend towards disorder, that's entropy.
Mm-hmm.
The proverb 3 stages, creation, then sort of holding steady, then dissipation, mirror that tendency. So preserving wealth means actively fighting against that natural drift.
It's like swimming upstream, constantly.
Exactly. It's not a passive thing at all.
And he's pretty blunt about it. Calls it unbelievably hard work and says failure is a real risk.
No sugarcoating. Nope. It really underscores that just having the money isn't the end game, not if you want it to last.
So why does it dissipate so often? What's the core problem he identifies?
This is maybe the most fundamental point he makes. He argues the biggest reason is that families focus too much, almost exclusively, on the financial capital, the money.
Okay. But isn't that what wealth is?
Well, yes and no. He suggests a family's greatest wealth is actually its human capital. The people, their skills, their health, their well-being, and its intellectual capital.
Intellectual capital. Like what they know.
Yeah, shared knowledge, wisdom, the family's values, their culture, how they understand things. Financial capital, in his view, is really just a tool. A powerful tool, sure, but its purpose is to support and grow the human and intellectual capital.
Okay, that flips the usual perspective, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
So if you only focus on the dollars and cents and neglect the people and their development, their shared understanding, well, that's why the shirt sleeves proverb often comes true.
Because you might have money, but not the capability or the shared vision to manage it wisely across generations.
Exactly. That's the critical error, he points out. Sustainable wealth needs that foundation of capable, wise people working together.
Okay, so if the foundation isn't just money, what holds it all together long term? What are the pillars?
A huge one is family governance. That's a central theme.
Governance sounds formal, like rules and meetings.
It can involve those things, sure, but he defines it more broadly as a system of governance or joint decision-making. The key insight isn't just having rules, it's about how the family makes decisions together.
Building trust, a shared vision.
Exactly. Without some kind of agreed-upon framework for tackling the big questions, especially about the wealth, it's really hard to stay aligned over generations.
He offered those 4 qualitative questions too, right? As a kind of checkup for the family's plan.
Yes, those are great. They push families to ask, do we have a shared mission? Are we actually developing all our capital, human, intellectual, and financial? Do we have ways to make decisions together? And do people trust that leadership is acting for the good of the whole family?
Those feel like much deeper questions than just, how did the portfolio do last quarter?
Worlds deeper. They get at the real health and long-term viability of the family system.
And what about the family stories he talks about? Why are they so important?
He calls them the glue that binds the family. Sharing family history, the triumphs, the struggles, the values. It creates that shared identity, that sense of what makes this family unique, its differentness.
Like an immune system against things that could pull the family apart.
That's exactly the analogy he uses. Failing to pass on those stories is like failing to immunize. They carry the lessons, the identity, the belonging. It's vital stuff.
I like the image of the copper beech tree, too.
Ah, yes, that beautiful long-lived tree.
What's the connection there?
It's a metaphor for the time scale you need to think on. This isn't about next year's returns. It's about generations. Like that tree, it needs deep roots, patience, a commitment that spans decades, even centuries.
So the financial capital, the money, it's really the fertilizer for those roots, for the human and intellectual growth.
That's a great way to put it. It's the enabler. But without investing in the people themselves, their knowledge, their shared wisdom, even a huge pile of fertilizer won't help a weak tree thrive long term. You can have undereducated family members, financially wealthy, but they might still make poor long-term choices.
No, okay, so governance is key. He also talks about it as a social compact. What's that about?
He connects it to how societies function. Think about early tribes relying on shared stories, or modern nations with constitutions. Any lasting group needs some kind of agreement, often unwritten, about how they'll live and decide things together.
Based on shared values.
Deeply shared values, exactly. That's the foundation of the compact.
He brings in Aristotle, talking about forms of government.
Right. He touches on monarchy, aristocracy, democracy, and concludes, like Aristotle did, that a republic, a representative system, often works best.
And he thinks that applies to families, too.
Often, yes. A system where there's representation, where decisions are made thoughtfully, not just by one person or by pure popular vote, seems to be more sustainable for families managing wealth over time.
It's like the U.S. Constitution example he uses, needing a way to adapt, but not making it too easy to change the core principles.
Precisely. You need stability, but also flexibility. Finding that balance is key, just like in national governance. Making changes too easy can undermine the whole structure.
So what's the ultimate point of all this governance structure? What's the mission?
The mission, as he frames it, is the enhancement of the pursuit of happiness of each individual member.
Pursuit of happiness, like the Declaration of Independence.
Very much in that spirit. He connects it back to Aristotle's ethics, living a virtuous, fulfilling life, and even Joseph Campbell's idea to follow your bliss.
So the family structure should support individuals in finding their own path, their own purpose.
Exactly. The core idea is that when individuals are thriving, pursuing what matters to them, the whole family becomes stronger, more resilient.
He uses that ever-changing mosaic image. Each piece shining contributes to the whole picture.
Yeah, I like that one too. A family isn't static. When individuals are fulfilled, the whole mosaic is more vibrant. Individual happiness fuels collective strength.
And he gives examples, right? Families that have managed to beat the shirt sleeves odds.
Yes, some very well-known names. The Mitsubishis in Japan, the Seungs in China, the Tatas and Birlas in India, even European families like the Windsors, the Westminsters, the Krupps.
The Tatas, for instance, their long history of philanthropy and strong ethics seems tied to their success.
Absolutely. And the point he makes is that their success wasn't luck. It wasn't predestined. It was about conscious choices, about exercising their free will to build and maintain systems that supported their values and their people over the long haul.
So, if families want to actively build this human and intellectual capital, what are some practical things they can do? He lists quite a few ideas.
He does. For human capital, it's things like, encouraging physical health, making sure basic needs are covered, having safety nets for emergencies, maybe supporting geographical diversity, letting people explore, and recognizing shared spiritual values.
And for the intellectual side?
Things like promoting lifelong learning, ensuring financial literacy across the board, making sure everyone understands the family's big picture financially, developing different kinds of intelligence, pushing intellectual boundaries, and encouraging knowledge of other cultures and languages, diversification of knowledge, basically.
It sounds like a lot to coordinate. That family mission statement seems crucial for pulling it all together.
Definitely a cornerstone document. He says it needs a common vision, those shared values, the family's differentness, acknowledging any difficult secrets openly.
That's interesting, acknowledging secrets.
Yeah, he flags secrets as a major potential liability. So transparency is key. Then recounting the family history, choosing the governance structure, and making roles clear.
Secrets can really corrode trust, can't they?
Hugely. So getting them out in the open appropriately is important.
Okay, so the family has a mission statement. They need to meet and talk. How do you make those meetings actually work?
Good question. He gives some ground rules. Crucially, create safety, Let people speak their truth without fear. Don't go in rigidly committed to one outcome. And he mentions Lee Hausner's rule. Try not to start sentences with "but."
Huh. That's a good practical tip. It immediately sounds defensive.
It does, doesn't it? He suggests starting activities too, like having members create personal resumes that include their passions, not just jobs, and openly discussing different ways the family could govern itself.
And rituals, they seem to pop up as important too.
Yes, rituals are powerful. They connect people to their ancestors, their stories, their unique identity. It could be daily or weekly things, big events like welcoming new members' birth, marriage marking deaths, even how you bring in outside advisors.
Celebrating milestones too.
Right, marking those developmental stages. They all reinforce that sense of shared journey.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. The family balance sheet. That sounds different from a normal balance sheet.
It is. It's much broader. It aims to measure and track not just the financial capital, but also the human capital, the people's skills, health, and the intellectual capital, the knowledge, the values. It gives a much more holistic picture of the family's real wealth.
A true measure of strengths.
Exactly. And it forces that long-term view he talks about, thinking in terms of 20, 50, even 100 years.
He also talks about investor allocation across generations. What's the logic there?
It's a strategy, often using trusts, to optimize financial growth while potentially minimizing estate taxes for older generations. The idea is that different generations or trusts can hold different asset types.
Like maybe younger generations hold riskier, higher growth assets.
Potentially, yeah, because they have a longer time horizon. But he stresses that for this to work, the trustees need real flexibility, broad investment discretion in the trust documents. They can't have their hands tied.
Okay, now these next two sound intriguing. Hat work and triangling. What are they?
Hat work comes from Dowd and Hausner. It's a technique to help family members understand different roles. You literally might use colored hats, say, a beneficiary hat and a trustee hat.
So you role play.
Exactly. You act out the responsibilities and perspectives of that role. It builds empathy and understanding. Triangling is from family systems theory, Bowen's work.
Okay.
It's about how sometimes when there's tension between two people, bringing in a third person can shift the dynamic. He suggests maybe using a third hat in the exercise, perhaps with a facilitator, could help navigate those tricky two-person dynamics. But it needs care.
Sounds like it could get complicated.
It definitely requires skill and maybe professional guidance.
What about the role of grandparents, the elders? How does that fit into the governance picture?
Their role often evolves. They might move from active day-to-day management to being more like wise observers, keepers of the flame maybe, and importantly, dispute resolvers.
Using their experience and perspective.
Right. Leveraging their vitality while letting the next generation step up into active roles. It's a transition.
And the family bank. That sounds like a practical tool.
It really does. It's proposed as an internal family lending institution. It can be a way to transfer wealth, but more importantly, to educate younger generations about finance, borrowing, responsibility, all within a safe environment.
Loans for investments, but also enhancement loans.
Yes, that's a key distinction. Enhancement loans are specifically for building human or intellectual capital, maybe funding education, or a startup idea. It's about promoting independence, not dependence. He contrasts enhancement with subsidy.
Subsidy breeds dependence, enhancement breeds independence.
That's the idea. He suggests starting it informally, but with clear rules for meetings and its own mission statement.
Okay, lots of internal roles. What about external support?
Yeah.
He mentions protectors, advisors, mentors, even hommes d'affaires?
Right, different support roles. Protectors add independent oversight, often for trusts. Advisors are typically non-family experts bringing specific knowledge. Mentors are crucial. They guide learning by asking questions, not giving answers.
And the homme d'affaires. Sounds very continental.
Yes, it translates roughly to man of affairs or business manager, but here it means someone impartial who can kind of gauge how well the governance system is actually working, an objective barometer. He really emphasizes choosing advisors who are genuinely interested in people, not just the structures.
That makes sense. And this loops back to the educated beneficiary, doesn't it? That idea seems central.
Absolutely critical, especially if you're aiming for that Republican model of governance where beneficiaries have a real say.
Right.
They need to understand the trust, their role, the trustee's role, basic finance.
And the trustee isn't just managing assets, they're also a mentor.
Ideally, yes. A huge part of the trustee's role, in this view, is educating and empowering the beneficiaries, fostering that financial literacy and sense of responsibility. Of course, they also have their core legal duties: fiduciary responsibility, administration, investment, distribution.
Where does philanthropy fit into all this?
It fits naturally within the family's mission and governance. It's a way to express the family's values outwardly, their responsibility to the world.
And organizing it involves the same challenges as other family decisions.
Exactly. Same governance issues apply. But the benefits can be huge. Learning to work together, rediscovering values, the sheer joy of helping others, strengthening family bonds, creating new positive family stories.
Okay, so as generations rise, you need to gauge how they're doing. How do you evaluate the next generation?
Two key areas: their financial competence, obviously, but also their calling. Are they finding that personal purpose, that pursuit of happiness?
So practical skills and personal fulfillment.
Right. He gives sample questions for the financial side, understanding statements, investments, taxes. Interestingly, he doesn't think you need to assess social capital separately.
Why not?
He figures it flows naturally from having strong human and intellectual capital. If people are well-developed and knowledgeable, they tend to build good social connections.
A peer review. That
Yeah.
sounds like bringing in outsiders to check on how things are going.
That's basically it. Getting trusted external peers, maybe from other families or foundations, to review the practices of the family's trust or philanthropy.
Not to solve problems, but to raise issues.
Exactly. It's about constructive feedback, ensuring excellence, maybe spotting blind spots, a mechanism for continuous improvement.
For the really big families, he mentions setting up their own private trust company, a PTC. Why would they do that?
Control, confidentiality, maybe cost, and ensuring long-term alignment. It gives them a dedicated structure, potentially higher quality service tailored to their specific needs, rather than relying solely on external corporate trustees. It's a big undertaking, though.
He also puts a spotlight on aunts and uncles. That felt quite unique.
It did, didn't it? He compares their potential role to what you see in some tribal societies, where they're really key figures in guiding nieces and nephews, especially during adolescence and the move to adulthood.
Offering a different kind of mentorship, maybe.
Exactly. A different perspective, another trusted adult outside the immediate parental relationship.
And on mentorship itself, he draws a clear line between that and teaching or coaching.
Yes. The key for him is that a great mentor asks questions. They don't just provide answers. They help the mentee discover their own learning process, their own solutions. It's about guiding self-discovery.
And the mentee needs to be ready for that.
Absolutely. Ready to learn, humble, willing to be a bit vulnerable. And he notes these relationships are usually temporary, serving a purpose for a specific time.
The Council of Elders idea seems to formalize that senior generation role we talked about earlier.
Right. It's like creating a recognized judicial branch in the family governance. Their job is dispute resolution, reinforcing values through storytelling, providing wisdom for the mission statement, or even family business decisions.
And the trustee role, again, evolving from mentor to regent. Can you unpack that analogy?
So the trustee starts as mentor, teaching the beneficiary. But as the beneficiary matures, the trustee becomes more like a regent in government, someone who governs wisely on behalf of others, all beneficiaries, present and future.
Like holding the kingdom in trust for the young heir.
Exactly. He highlights traits of successful regents that apply to trustees. Focus on education, earning authority, not just having it, acting for everyone's benefit, putting their own interests aside, having the right skills, and knowing their role is temporary stewardship.
Now, towards the end, he raises some red flags about perpetual trusts, things beyond just taxes.
Yes, this is really important. He looks at history, the English rule against perpetuities, why France got rid of trusts after the Revolution, concerns about tying up assets forever, creating a non-productive class.
So what are the main issues he sees today?
Three big ones: unintended consequences, society's interest, and entropy.
Unintended consequences like beneficiaries becoming too dependent.
Exactly. He calls it remittance addiction, just waiting for the check. And also trustee entropy, the trustees themselves becoming less engaged, less dynamic over many, many decades.
And society's interests.
Just questioning whether it's good for society overall to have vast wealth locked up potentially forever. And entropy. Nothing lasts forever, right? Even trust structures.
But he thinks these risks can be managed.
He suggests they can be mitigated, especially with those mentor trustees and truly educated, engaged beneficiaries. The key is beneficiaries striving for their own self-awareness, freedom, finding their calling, taking responsibility, not just relying on the trust.
It all comes back to the human and intellectual capital again.
It really does.
And he ends with that image of the pilgrim's journey.
Yeah, framing this whole multi-generational effort as a pilgrimage, a pelerinage. It takes courage, faith, commitment. The symbols, the shell, the hat, the staff, represent that dedication to the long, often challenging journey.
Okay, so pulling all these threads together from our deep dive into family wealth, what's the big takeaway?
For me, it's that lasting family wealth is fundamentally holistic. You absolutely cannot just focus on the money. You have to actively cultivate the people, their knowledge, their shared values. You need robust, adaptable governance. You need education and mentorship baked into the system. And you need to be really aware of the potential downsides, even of things like perpetual trusts. It's complex.
It really is. But hopefully this deep dive has given you, the learner, a solid handle on the core ideas from these sources.
A good shortcut to the essentials.
Right. So that leads us to our final thought for you. We've talked a lot about history, about purpose, about human capital. Thinking about all that, what's maybe one immediate practical step you could imagine taking right now to strengthen the human capital within your own family or maybe even your wider network? Something to chew on.
And of course, if this has sparked your interest, there's so much more depth in the book, excerpts, and the resources mentioned. Definitely worth exploring further.